Well, welcome, senators and visitors and guests. We're delighted to have you here. But we are meeting today in the shadow of events that have profoundly affected the lives of several of our young students and that have troubled all of us immensely. And as you know, if you've read the agenda, it's full of a number of important items that you'll see here. But these are also items that may pale when compared with the events of the day. And if it is your will, senators, we will focus much of our time today not on our agenda items, but on the aftermath of the sexual assault allegations. So that will be up to you, and we'll proceed according to the email that I sent out to you. We are a deliberative body, of course, and we're entrusted by the statutory faculty to exercise shared governance responsibly and wisely. And I'm sure that we'll make our actions today and our discussions today reflect our capacity to employ good judgment in the exercise of our power. So we are now called to order, and we will proceed. I've only done that twice this whole year, so it felt really good. We will proceed to the business of the day. And item number 2 is the approval of the minutes of April 9th. We are rapidly catching up with our minutes process, and the April 9th minutes have been posted on the website, and I would ask whether there are any corrections to the minutes. And seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Wonderful. Item number 3, I invite President Gottfredson to the podium for a university update.
Well, thank you, Margie. And thank you for your service to the Senate this past year. I know this is the last meeting of your presidency.
It is.
And I want to take a moment to thank you for the skill and diplomacy with which you've handled any number of important issues that have come before the Senate. You've accomplished a lot during a time of great change, and we all appreciate that very, very much.
Thank you.
Now, I had intended to talk this afternoon about several significant matters that we have before us as a university, such as the strengthening of our academic freedom policy, the transfer of all OUS administrative rules to UO policy as part of our transition to an independent board of trustees. The academic freedom policy is one review away from being finalized, and I have every intention of concluding that process on time. The policy transfer is going smoothly, and as we have indicated, the Senate will play a central role in review of at least 50 to 70 academic policies that will be coming your way. These matters are certainly important, but there's another issue, as you know, of more immediate urgency to our campus community, and that is the issue of sexual assault, harassment, and intimidation on our campus. No one ever should have to experience sexual violence or harassment or intimidation of any kind. Not one student, not one staff member, not one faculty member, not a single member of our community. That's without question. Yet too many do. President Obama has identified sexual assault at colleges and universities as a significant threat to our campuses, our communities, our country. The White House Task Force reports that nationally, 1 in 5 women is sexually assaulted while in college. 1 in 5. That's shocking to many people. That's appalling. But I promise you, this figure does not shock the good people on our campus and others across the nation who work in student health centers, campus counseling centers, dean of student offices, those who work every day to protect students and to provide them with support services, advocacy, and education regarding sexual violence. They're all too familiar with this statistic. And right now, our campus is grappling with this issue. An incident occurred that is incredibly complex and profoundly disturbing. It's angered many people, including me, and rightfully so. It violates our very sense of who we are as a community of caring people. How we as a university go forward from this incident, how we choose to learn from it, how we decide to act on what we learn, will be a clear representation of who we are and what we stand for. But we as a campus have an opportunity to take our anger, to take our energy around this issue and direct it toward a solution. We have an opportunity, I would say that we have a responsibility to become leaders in the nation in creating a campus that's safe from sexual violence and harassment. Today, I'm going to address why I'm confident that we're handling the current incident appropriately and outline some of the steps we've already taken and will take in the immediate future to create a safer campus community. Because we cannot, by law, share many details of this case. Some have speculated that we're not acting in the best interest of the university and that student safety has been compromised, or that we turn a blind eye toward misconduct, or that we would tolerate for one moment sexual violence and intimidation on our campus. These assumptions are patently false, and such speculations are very, very inappropriate. We're dealing with a highly sensitive and incredibly complex issues concerning people's lives, our students' lives. Throughout our response to this incident, as in all such cases, protecting the safety, security, and rights of the individuals involved and of all of our students was and is our top priority. Now, I do understand the frustration of not being able to say more. I feel that myself. We would like to say more. But we will follow federal law in protecting the privacy of our students. When we receive a report of sexual misconduct, an established process of support and investigation goes into effect immediately. And by immediately, I mean within minutes. In every case, we must act swiftly and appropriately with the information that we have. We do this within a context of various laws and policies that are designed to provide the highest level of support and protection for the rights and safety of our students. These considerations include support services for those who have experienced sexual violence, the rights of all students under Title IX obligations, the application of our code of conduct, and full cooperation with law enforcement. We have clear and distinct obligations in each of these four areas, which we must balance carefully and weigh against one another continually in real time. They're incredibly complex, nuanced, and often contradictory, as the national conversation now tells us. The moment we receive a report, parallel processes in each of these areas begin. Now, it's important to remember that many of the actions the university takes in situations such as this are not disclosable to protect privacy. In general, however, actions we might take include issuing no contact orders, imposing restrictions on time and place on campus of accused students, and providing requested accommodations to survivors. In this case, processes remain ongoing. It would be wrong for us to speak directly to the specifics of this or other cases. To do so could violate the privacy of the individuals involved. And it could risk having a chilling effect on the reporting of sexual misconduct in the future. In recent days, we have seen the very unfortunate consequence of judgment in the absence of understanding. These are complex and nuanced matters. As president, I'm responsible for this campus. I'm responsible for the integrity of the institution and the security of our students. And I take that responsibility very seriously. My own academic background is criminology, studying, researching, and publishing about crime, violence, and prevention. That's my life's work. I've worked with law enforcement, district attorneys, and the prevention community throughout my entire career. Interfering with due process, individual rights to privacy, or an ongoing criminal investigation in any way that could jeopardize an outcome of prosecution in something as significant as this matter is something I would not do. It's something we would not do. This is something I take very seriously for the survivors, for the accused, for our campus, and for society. Now, it was entirely appropriate that we work closely with the Eugene Police Department as they pursued their investigation. And we abided by their request that we not take actions that might interfere with that investigation. The university had ongoing contact with the EPD to follow their investigation. Our communications team posted a timeline yesterday detailing the steps in this process that we are able to make public. And you can find that link on my website, and I refer you to it. Importantly, just before the basketball team left for the NCAA tournament, we specifically asked the EPD whether the players should be allowed to travel. We were advised not to do anything to alert the players to an investigation. That is, to not do anything we would not usually do. Clearly, keeping players off that plane would have done so. In my opinion, at that time, the balance of our interest favored protection of the integrity of the criminal process and not interfering with a criminal investigation. Interfering with due process, individuals' right to privacy, or an ongoing criminal investigation in a way that could jeopardize the outcome of a prosecution is something I will never do and would not allow members of our administration to do. This is something I take seriously for survivors, for the accused, for our campus, and for society. This is where we seek to balance our obligations under Title IX and our other obligations. Title IX explicitly permits campus investigations to defer to serious criminal investigations. It does not allow that forever, as it should not. It does not mean through the full adjudication of a case. But it is consistent with Title IX to act precisely in the way the university acted. Some have also questioned whether we fulfilled our obligations under the Clery Act. We did. I've shared everything with you that I can about what occurred. Now's the time to turn our attention to the future. This is a time when it's important for us to come together as a campus, as a community, to make our university stronger, safer, to ensure that we, the faculty, staff, and administration of this university, are fostering a culture of safety, dignity, and respect for students. We share responsibility for creating a culture free from sexual harassment, from violence, from intimidation. We've already taken some significant steps, and I have the utmost respect and appreciation for Vice President for Student Affairs, Robin Holmes, and her outstanding staff for the work that they've done. These steps address prevention, support, response, and education. Last fall, Vice President Holmes commissioned an independent review of our student sexual misconduct, harassment, and assault policies and procedures. An external reviewer examined our policies, our practices, and protocols, our staff procedures, our prevention responses, and outreach materials to ensure that they align with federal civil rights and peer institution best practices. This review, the Groves Report, found many things to commend. It also found room for improvement, including the need to add staff, improve access to information, and improve student education. Most of the recommendations have been implemented. The remaining ones are in progress, including redefining the jurisdiction boundaries of the Conduct Code. That requires Senate's action to change, and I understand that's among this body's top priorities. We have already added 3 staff members and are hiring 1 more as recommended by the external review. And I'm authorizing now the creation of 2 additional staff positions, aligned with the recommendations of the White House Task Force and our Vice President for Student Affairs to augment our support for survivors. The first is a sexual violence response and support services director that will provide confidential support and advocacy to survivors. Providing survivors with a choice of reporting to either an advocate who has reporting obligations or an advocate who can maintain confidentiality is an important component in providing a comprehensive slate of services. We will also hire an equal opportunity specialist and Title IX investigator in affirmative action to help with an increase in reporting of sexual misconduct that we've seen recently. These hires will improve our prevention and support efforts and support our goal for the actions of this campus to go beyond those called for by the White House and lead the way in this charge nationally. Another element of the White House plan is the undertaking of campus climate surveys. This will be one of the charges for the panel. We will convene to undertake an independent external review of our practices for preventing and responding to sexual violence, as I announced last Friday. This panel will be composed of representative experts on sexual violence, higher education, law, athletics, and equity. This group's charge will be to examine our campus climate, our recruiting and student education practices in athletics, and our efforts to prevent and respond to sexual violence and intimidation. The overriding goal will be to come away with concrete action to move us forward as a campus in protecting all students. Vice President for Student Affairs Robin Holmes, our athletic director Rob Mullins, and I are taking recommendations for people who would bring appropriate independent perspective and expertise to the group. I've already received some recommendations, and I thank you for those. More are welcome. This review is important to ensure our institutional policies and individual practices fully support the values of personal respect and privacy, and that student safety and academic integrity remain at the core of our mission. We will solicit input and expertise from within our own community, because although this is clearly an issue of national concern, the solution has to begin here on our campus. This is our moment. This is our time to come together as a community and as a university to change the culture of sexual violence, harassment, intimidation that devastates far too many lives. It's our duty and it's our responsibility as a university to one another. I know we have the will, I know we have the leadership, and we have the commitment to change the culture to make this campus safe for everyone. I'll take questions now, President.
Thank you.
Harris.
Thank you. Before we start the Q&A, I once more invite those folks who've just come in, if you'd like to sit down. There are probably about 10 seats in the room scattered around. Feel free to find one, sit in it, no matter where it is. There are 2 chairs up here as well. Please raise your hands. Name tents to be, and wait for the microphone. Thank you. If you have a question for President Gottfredson.
My name is Laura Lee McIntyre, and I'm a professor in school psychology in the College of Education. And my comment is actually, it's not a question, it's a comment, and I thank you for your comprehensive response and your commitment to clearly communicating your action plan as a university leader, but also thinking not only about cooperating with the criminal investigation, but thinking proactively and preventively, as well as developing a comprehensive crisis plan. So I thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Questions? Is that a hand? No. Questions from the Senate? Senator Harbaugh, microphone coming.
So I have a couple questions, but I'll just start with this. You said that the protection of the students was a foremost priority for the university, and I certainly agree with you that it is. I met yesterday with the University of Oregon Police Department spokesperson and was told that the UO Police Department never received the copy of the Eugene Police Department's investigation from your office, that they got it by reading it on the Register Guard website. So I find it hard to understand how, if the protection of our students is our highest priority, this information about this investigation was not conveyed to our university police department, and I hope you can explain that.
I actually don't know what our police department's response to that would be. They certainly do have available the EPD Police Investigative Report. So that's certainly my opinion. Yeah.
They got it, I think it would have been about 3 weeks after the report was complete, and they only got it by finding it on the Register Guard website.
Well, I guess maybe I could rephrase the question a little bit and ask, does the central administration have a policy of not providing information to the U of O police?
Well, no, certainly, of course not. We would provide all information that we could in a timely manner.
Thank you. Questions from the floor? Senator Sayer, was that that wasn't a question. Questions? One more?
So then another question would be regarding the revisions to the Student Conduct Code. My understanding is that these were originally proposed by a Dear Colleague letter from the Department of Education, maybe the Civil Rights Division, in 2011. And those suggestions to universities, maybe they were, best practices, I don't know the technical term, but universities were advised to update their student conduct codes to expand the jurisdiction beyond the campus boundaries and to change the standard of evidence. That was sent out in 2011. It was 3 years until the university submitted its proposed revisions to the Student Conduct Code. In fact, it was not done until 4 days after your office learned of these allegations. Mm-hmm. If those revisions had been done in a timely manner, my understanding is that the students who were alleged to have been involved in this incident would have been subject to our conduct, clearly subject to our conduct code, and subject to the new revised standard of proof.
Can I just interject real quickly here,
Sure.
and then I'll give you a chance to respond, Mr. President. I can attest to the fact that I've been in conversations with Robin Holmes about the preponderance of the evidence change and the jurisdictional change for some months that had nothing, it could not have had anything to do with this incident because those conversations have been ongoing. And off-campus jurisdiction for sexual violence already exists in the Student Conduct Code. That's not the change that's being proposed in any event. So I think it's important to get those facts on the table.
Well, I appreciate that, President Paris, and I agree with you very much. And we are eager for the Senate to take action on the Student Conduct Code. It is a Senate matter. I don't know if Vice President Holmes would like to address that.
Oh, there you are. Microphone down here.
As President Parrish said, that is true that we can extend the conduct code for matters of sexual violence, and we would when we need to do that. Secondly, I've been in this role for 6 years now, and for at least 3 years we've had conversations with the Senate and the Senate subcommittee about a model conduct code that is out there and would address these types of issues, and it has not moved forward. This is the furthest we've had it move forward in the 3 years that we've been working on this, and I'm hopeful about that, but it is just not true that we've only just been looking at these issues. A lot of people have spent a lot of time, including faculty and staff, on these particular issues, and it's important, and we should move them forward as soon as possible.
And let me just go further and say that I've been in a number of conversations, even starting last summer, with faculty who were frustrated by the fact that they couldn't get proposed changes through the Student Conduct and Community Standards Committee. That is a Senate committee, not an administrative committee, and it's very difficult to make changes to the code because there's a lot of concern among our student body about those changes, and the students form half of that committee. So it's a very challenging situation. In my experience over the past year, the administration has been very patient with the committee. We now have a committee that's, I think, moving forward on these changes, and the Senate will have an opportunity to review them, as well as some work by some others in our community in our next meeting, which is May 28th. Question from Professor Bonine in the back.
Thank you, President Gottfredson. I'm also concerned about forward-looking policies and actions. At present, I and others have been reviewing the Student Conduct Code, and I'm focusing on possible recommendations that would make it more consistent with both the Office of Civil Rights Dear Colleague letter of 3 years ago and the Groves report of 5 months ago. But in addition, other possibilities that would help change the campus climate in various ways and would help empower complainants in ways that they are not empowered at present. So far, only 2 recommendations have been put forward by the administration to the Student Conduct Committee. Those recommendations on geographical extension and the issue of preponderance of the evidence for expulsion. Those of us who have studied the Groves report carefully and have looked into various issues here have found several issues in the Student Conduct Code that are not being addressed. While I appreciate Dr. Holmes' suggestion that we might want to move towards some different model code at this point, it seems to me we can always do that. The question is, can we adopt some additional changes in the next 2 weeks beyond the recommendations made to the Student Conduct Committee? And so my question is, will you and your staff be open to a rapid review of additional proposals for changes in the code during the next 2 weeks so that we can get feedback, reactions from administrative staff, and obviously discussions without letting this go over into next year, the possibility of making changes additional to the ones that are already in the committee. If so, I and others have a number of changes that we would like to propose, and it would be best if we could work collaboratively with folks so that we can all come to a common agreement.
Yeah, well, I very much agree with your statement. Appreciate your input and welcome your suggestions, your comments, to see those as soon as we can. We will work as diligently and as aggressively as we possibly can because changes to the Student Conduct Code are very, very important. So we will work as rapidly as we possibly can on that. Yes.
I will want to remind the body, and John, I know you've emailed me about this today, that we do have notice requirements. Obviously, this body can move to suspend the rules, as we've had an email discussion in the instant case. But we do have processes that involve a committee that is comprised, at least half of which is comprised of students. And I encourage people to think about the notice to students who are now going to be entering their final exam period on anything as profound as a complete change to the Student Conduct Code. It was last changed, I think, I don't know, maybe 10 years or so ago, and it was a very lengthy process of discussion. Professor Frankel? No, I want to call him Professor Frankel now. I'll get back to you.
So I was chair of the Student Conduct Committee, as it was then called, back in 96 when we made the changes to the Sexual Misconduct Code, so 1996, that expanded jurisdiction off campus. That took 2 years of concerted effort after a real sweeping movement driven by student energy. Then it was another 10 years to get further changes through. We've been talking about moving toward a model code for, 8 years, 9 years. This stuff has moved very slowly. That's not an administrative problem. That has to do with the structure of the Student Conduct Committee and the ways in which that's integrating a whole bunch of different voices and concerns. So I just want to, put that into perspective, the framework, the time that this is all taken, and so what is involved in moving quickly. Moving quickly is wonderful. We haven't been able to move quickly on these issues historically.
And we now have the opportunity to work together,
which is
expeditiously,
amazing,
to have the best student conduct code we can possibly have in the country. That should be our objective.
Professor Bona, and your follow-up.
I've looked at the Senate bylaws carefully, and in my opinion, and I understand that there may be disagreement about this, the notice of motion that was posted for the two measures that are in committee process does not comply with the bylaws, and therefore those two items can only be enacted by a motion for suspension of the rules. So I would suggest that whether those go under a motion for suspension of the rules or whether other changes might be added for a motion of suspension of the rules in terms of the amount of notice is basically the same. Now, I understand we may have some disagreement, but that, I believe, is the case because the bylaws require not just a notice saying we're going to make a motion about something. The bylaws require that the motion be available, which it has not been.
That is not the case. The bylaws require a notice of motion. Text of the motion is to be posted 5 days before the meeting. That will be that is the case that we followed until the 5-day text rule was just enacted at our last meeting. Until then, we didn't even have the text until right before. I also want to point out those two changes, John, have gone through the Student Conduct and Community Standards Committee. They've been fully processed. They will come to this body as seconded motions, having gone through a process involving our students. That stands in great contrast. It's going to be up to the will of this body. I'm not even going to be here at that meeting. It'll be up to the will of this body. But I do want you to be aware of a very profound issue about student notice, working with students on the code of conduct that binds them. We talk a lot about serving as educators. I don't know that it'll behoove us to serve as educators for our students if we enact a student conduct code wholly fresh without any involvement on the part of our students. But I will leave that in your hands.
And Margie, of course, my point is, and we do have a disagreement on what needs to be a notice, but regardless, since only one of the two motions has been even posted now for the students on this campus.
They'll have up to 5 days.
And the other one, I understand.
It'll be there.
So if 5 days is enough for informing the campus, then as long as I or others provide our proposals more than 5 days before the next meeting, there will be the same amount of notice for both.
Have yours been processed through the committee?
They are not required to be processed through the committee. That is one method for bringing matters to the floor of this body, but the other method is direct enactment. So I simply point that out. Now, I am willing to meet with the committee tomorrow when they have a meeting and discuss some of these issues, but processing through the committee, which has just barely been, some of the student members just recently appointed, and the committee has only met twice, once in I think it was April 10th and May 1st. I don't remember the exact dates, but I believe that's the only time that they've met on these matters, and they're going to meet again tomorrow on one of them in order to come up with it. I'm not suggesting overriding a process. I'm suggesting that we can process this to death as long as we get adequate notice out to everybody for various other things, such as giving complainants the right to legal representation and various other measures that just aren't there now. Then we should be able to have, I think, a good and robust debate and not kill additional progressive policies that are also adequately noticed. Thank you.
I understand. Colleagues, you will decide. Senator Garcia-Picaro, microphone down here, sir. Hold up your name tent, Pedro, if you would. Yeah. We've only got one runner today.
Thank you, President Gottfredson, for your speech. It's really made a difference, I think, for many of us to see your leadership and to believe, of course, as we must, in your best intentions at all times. I have two questions. One of them is a suggestion for a possible motion later today. The first question only arose today in my mind after attending for the first time an open meetings of the Inter-Athletics Committee where Professor Fried announced that she has lodged a complaint following the Clery Act against the university, and that the Federal Department of Education will be looking into the actions and so on. And I think the Senate should know about that fact and what your reaction to that might be. And the second question, I think, is unrelated, but I think it's a very important one that I would like to see what your view on it is. Has to do with the faculty athletic representative. It's a key figure to join the two universities that live within this campus, the athletic operations as well as the academic operations. And this representative seems to be right now being appointed through a sort of, I don't want to say secret, but a very private process that I know it's other faculty who are doing it and so on. But I wonder, how could we conceive of a way in which the Senate might have a say on this appointment, whether it might be after you nominate this figure, whether you would be willing to come to the Senate for us to vote and maybe, obviously, hopefully back this nomination, so that moving forward we get a sense that we are all involved in the oversight, the academic oversight, and the accountability of our athletic operation.
Yes. Well, thank you for those questions. The second one first. It's a confidential process. It's not a secret process. And so it's designed to try to encourage people to apply and consider the appointment. I think it's appropriate. I'm certainly always willing to hear suggestions about how we can improve the process or how we might go forward in reassuring people about the selection of the individual. So look forward to doing that. But would not look for a vote for the appointment. It's an administrative appointment, and like other administrative appointments, would do that. With respect to your first question, I would always encourage anyone who feels there has been a violation to report that violation. I think that's an appropriate thing for anyone to do. I think that I know the university proceeded appropriately with the McCleary Act.
Question? Senator Harbaugh?
So at this point, there are many timelines about the events between the alleged rape and the time it became public, which was about 2 months, and many questions about whether the university was working cooperatively with the Eugene police or not. The Eugene police have a timeline, your office has a timeline, I have a timeline, the newspapers have timelines. But I think for me, the main issue is this fact that it was a full 2 months before anybody learned of this, and we only learned of it from newspaper reports, and the reporters only learned of it because they noticed the players weren't showing up at practice. So I'm hoping that you can give us an explanation of how you planned to eventually make this event public to the campus so that students could be aware that these kinds of incidents were occurring.
So I would point to the timeline that our communication staff has published as the timeline that's appropriate that we can disclose at this time. Again, this process is ongoing, and what can be disclosed at a point in time is determined by that process to protect the privacy rights of our students. And what we can disclose at one point in time may differ from what can be disclosed at another point in time. So the proper notifications to the campus, I believe, were given, provided the balance of interests that we operate under and did operate under at that time. And if we can say more, when we can say more, we surely will.
Can I just ask a slightly different question? And that is, would the university be able to disclose conduct involving current students at the university if that information were not already disclosed in a newspaper via a public records request? I mean, what would the university say? We've received allegations of a crime on campus?
Thank you for that question. I'd take that, ask maybe Doug to answer that question. I don't want to make a mistake about answering such an important question.
So, Doug, what I'm asking is, even if the university wanted to disclose allegations that involve current students, what in fact would the university be able to disclose until after that information had been publicly exposed through newspaper reports and so forth?
Very little. I mean, as the president has already mentioned, federal law, FERPA, precludes all institutions of higher education who receive federal funding, including the University of Oregon, from disclosing any personally identifiable information maintained in an education record. That's just black letter law. A lot of the information that the university has cited in the timeline actually comes from a different source, not from internal university records, but you'll notice they actually come from the publicly available police report. So there is very little information that can be disclosed because of student privacy rights. In addition, just to reemphasize what the president already mentioned, during that time frame, there was an ongoing criminal investigation. So even if the university could disclose some information in cases where a law enforcement agency requests that you not disclose information because it could tip off the potential targets, the university will oftentimes honor that request if you don't want to compromise the potential of prejudice, a criminal investigation. And if the university did do that, if they release information anyway, then the university could be in the exact opposite position of compromising a criminal investigation, and then the allegation could be that the university did that in order to show favoritism to student athletes. So there are, like the president said, it's a complex, it's multifactorial, and there are any number of reasons why information can't be disclosed during the course of an ongoing criminal investigation.
Thank you. And by the way, I failed to introduce Doug Park from the General Counsel's office. There, I know I saw a hand up just a minute ago. Senator Psaki, to your right.
I'm not sure this is the moment to change slightly the focus from this particular case, which is obviously a burning issue. It's very painful. Everyone is confused, and the information isn't out. But I would maybe suggest that it's time to think about the question of climate. The word keeps coming up as though all of this were as unpredictable and unchangeable as the weather. A climate of sexual violence or a climate of tolerance. And I guess I would like to ask, since you are here and it's the topic of the day, what do you think are the ingredients in that climate, in the bigger picture, aside from this terrible case and what happened to that poor young woman? What do you think are the ingredients to a climate that could allow something like that to happen so often?
So I agree we won't speak about this specific case, and my remarks are not addressed to the specific case. I think that yes, no, but yours is not. It's about the climate, is the way I understand it. And I think we have a serious issue. First, I think we do need continuous assessment of the climate. And that I don't mean all issues that go in climate surveys, but about sexual violence and misconduct and reporting and our understanding of our educational procedures and what's available on the campus. So I think that our entire community, conversation about sexual violence and sexual misconduct should be louder. The voices should be stronger. They should involve all of our campus community, our students, our staff, our faculty, the president, everyone, to recognize that there is a problem, that there's an issue on our campus, not just nationally, but on our campus, and that we all should do what we can to educate our students, educate ourselves, educate our staff and faculty about best prevention practices. We have got a lot of expertise on this campus about prevention and the practices that are appropriate and educational materials and devices that can be used. And so to change the climate, I think, is to speak about the climate, is to address the problems, and to do that collectively as a community would be a first step. Be a good step, necessary step.
Any more questions? Senator Keir?
Thank you, and I want to thank President Mike Gottfredson for his comments today. I think it's been very helpful. It's the first time we've had this interaction, all of us together with you. And thank you for taking questions. As the incoming Senate President, I have several concerns, and one of those relates to the charter itself. The President and the professors constitute the faculty, and as such, have the immediate government and discipline of the students therein. I want to make sure that our Senate, which represents the faculty and the other 4 constituencies, is fully involved in what you've proposed. And I would like to ask if you would be willing to discuss with me, and then we of course, will report to the campus, the formation of a joint task force focused on the present and the future, in particular related to legislation that can be moved through the Senate, so that we fulfill our obligation to the university.
Yeah.
And in this way, it's truly shared governance, because we're helping you fulfill your obligation, and you're helping us fulfill ours. And in that spirit of cooperation, I'd like to proceed.
Yes. Well, first of all, I agree with your premise very much, and would welcome that interaction and that. So, yes, absolutely.
Thanks so much. So we'll discuss, and I will definitely, you have my word, as soon as I take office, we'll be in touch with everyone.
Great.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? All right, one more, Senator Harbaugh. Okay, 2 more. Senator Harbaugh, then Senator Psaki.
So I'm not sure that I got it straight, but my understanding is that you are considering appointing people to lead an independent investigation of this. Yes. And I'd like to ask whether you have considered, or whether you would consider having or asking the UO Board of Trustees to appoint such a committee, because I think that would be more clearly independent than one that was appointed by yourself.
I am working with UO Board of Trustees in this matter.
And Senator Psaki.
Thank you very much for your comments in response to my question. And I think you answered my second question, what do we do? But my first question was really, what do you think the ingredients are? Not just, secrecy or silence or a failure to talk loudly enough or collectively enough about it. But what do you see as some of the pressures that, or prompts or ingredients to the climate of, first, sexual violence or abuse or misconduct, and secondly, tolerance? Thank you.
So I was trying to be responsive to that question, because I think one of the aspects of culture is voice. It's conversation. It's how loud people speak. It's actually how continuously people speak. So culture means many things to many people. Attitudes, dispositions, and behaviors would be included. So I think that it's important, and the President of the United States has initiated this. I think that's a loud voice. That's a good voice. To talk openly, responsively, about how sexual violence, intimidation, and harassment are not allowable, what they are, and to communicate clearly what we mean by those concepts and to do that collectively. So I think culture is very definitely embedded in how we communicate and how often we communicate and what we talk about.
And Senator Murskin.
I'm interested in other views also, so if you have other views, I'd
Certainly,
like to
thank
hear
you.
those.
I keep saying one more, that's why I was laughing.
Okay,
I welcome
that's true.
your question.
That's true. Just one
Yeah.
more. Is I'd like to push this a little more,
Sure.
which I appreciate your response to Senator Saki's question having to do with what the ingredients are, looking to the future as to what might make it not what it is, but push it a bit more as to what the ingredients are or were that permitted the situation to happen to be where it is now.
Okay, so I'll speak to one.
To speak to that,
I'll
please.
speak to one that I'm
Thank you.
not in this case. I will not speak to this case and
Understandable.
cannot with that. So one of the things I think is important for all of us to do is own it. Is own it. So to say, it doesn't happen. If I see it, I'm responsible for it. Every time, in every instance. To personally own it, every single person. To not be a bystander. That's a term that people use. You can't be a bystander to aggression. You can't be a bystander to assault. You can't be a bystander to sexual violence and harassment. That's where you start, seems to me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
We move on to number 4, item number 4 on our agenda, which is new business. Senator Harbaugh. Microphone. There it is. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'd like to, I think I'm doing this correctly, I would like the Senate to entertain a motion to suspend the rules, to discuss a resolution about the allegations and the administration's response, and for that matter, the faculty on the Senate's response. And I would explicitly say that this is not a call for a discussion for a vote of no confidence in President Gottfredson or in the response that the administration has made. But I do think that the Senate needs to say something publicly in the form of a resolution about this matter.
So there's a motion to suspend the rules that's on the floor to discuss a resolution. Is there a title? Is it fluid?
A resolution, the Senate responds to the sexual assault allegations on the U of O campus.
Okay, so there's a motion to suspend the rules so that the Senate can consider a resolution about the Senate's response to sexual violence allegations. And the motion to suspend is a rule that does not require a second, and it is not debatable. It is subject to a yes or no vote. It requires a 2/3 majority of the voting senators in order to succeed to place the resolution on the floor of the Senate for discussion. So the motion on the floor is a motion to suspend the rules to permit discussion on the proposed resolution. Am I right about that, Mr. Parliamentarian? Does that sound right? All right. I'm going to call for a vote. We don't need a second on a motion to suspend. So I think I'm right about that. It does require a second. Boom, Randy. And I saw that look on Paul's face, so I knew I was kind of saying it wrong. Okay, is there a second to the motion to suspend the rules? Second from Senator Kramer. Okay, so all those, and I'm going to ask you to hold your name tents up because we'll need to do a count. All those in favor of a motion to suspend the rules so that the resolution can be discussed on the floor of the Senate, please raise your name tents and hold them up. All those opposed to the motion, please raise your name tents. Keep them up for a second. You get 9? I get 9. 30 votes in favor of the resolution, of the motion to suspend, 9 votes opposed to the motion to suspend. The motion to suspend carries. The item on the floor is the resolution proposed by Senator Harbaugh. Senator Kramer.
I just want to say I'm not sure what we should do, but I want us to make some sort of statement that we need is full transparency. What upsets me is I know there's binding things that you can't say anything, and some of us have heard that there's going to be a federal investigation. I don't know. But we need is full transparency so the community can know what happened, to know that we followed the right procedures for real, because nobody trusts that the university did, and that's where we come in, is to make sure somehow that we did follow. That's what that independent investigation would be, but the Senate should be watching out for that.
Senator Dreiling in the front.
I want to speak to the point that President Gottfredson raised about owning it. And to me, this is a bigger issue. And I think we need to own it, all of us here on this campus. It's not just the administration here. I'm hearing from dear colleagues from all corners of the campus their deep concerns. This is a sobering moment. We are having a very real conversation here with a very real issue that has been magnified by an incident. But this one incident isn't it. This is an ongoing issue. I mean, the Air Force is dealing with this issue. Of course, every major institution in this country is dealing with this issue. And if, I'm not interested in a resolution that in any way deflects responsibility. And I'm also not interested in a resolution that really tries to pin some specificity to this case. I'm interested in the Senate making a bold statement about we as faculty, we as a university, working together in our shared governance model to really tackle this. And that we're going to own the mistakes, the oversights, the slow processes, the failures at deliberation that we've made. We're going to own it. And if we can make a resolution to that effect, and that we can then be partners in addressing this sincerely, heartfully, for our students, and just for the future of this institution, then yeah, I'm with it. So that's where I'm putting my voice on this, and it may be a simple statement that, we have not done enough for this issue. We haven't, and now it's time. It's time. It's a wake up. And I think President Gottfredson also pointed this out. We can't be bystanders either here in the Senate. We've got to be proactive, as with the student body. So I'll stop there.
Thank you. Senator Delabow.
Thank you. I couldn't agree more. I really appreciate the focus that you're giving where we are. And again, some of you have read my comments. I'm supportive of a resolution that will make that type of larger statement, that we will be accountable and that it's not focused on the shortcomings of us and them, and that we are going to lead a model of shared governance by our own behavior instead of blaming and being suspicious. We have a long era of suspicion, and I'd like to discard that because we have a new era, and I would really like to take a step forward with good faith and give it a chance and take some more proactive steps so that we're not bogged down in the very bureaucracy that we create.
Senator Keir, I saw your hand next.
So I proposed a few moments ago a way forward. I called it a task force. It doesn't have to be a task force. But I agree with what's being said. I'm very moved by it. I'm moved by the tenor and the direction of the conversation. Now we need to talk about how are we going to accomplish this. I think we agree about how we need to move forward. How can we do this as a body? Why don't we work together now to find a way that we can craft in this resolution to go forward?
Senator Martinez.
I very much appreciate the spirit of this conversation up to this point. The worst thing this body can do is be silent. Part of the culture that these great questions we're pursuing is this issue of silence. What are we willing to tolerate as a campus community? So being silent is a problem. Deciding what to say is complicated. So to me, this conversation is really helpful. It's obvious that there's a lot that we don't know as a campus community. From the administration to an individual faculty to an individual student to an external community member, there's a lot that we don't understand. Drawing conclusions about anything is, at this moment, problematic. It's reactive, and we're unlikely to make progress. It seems to me we need to commit to two things. One is a commitment to fully understand. We cannot heal, we cannot recover, we cannot engage in good prevention practices without understanding exactly what led us here. So there is a part of understanding that is essential for us to move forward. And the second part is really to ensure a commitment in the conversation that we move forward with purpose and action as a Senate and as a campus community. So in my mind, there really are two parts. A commitment to be fully engaged in the understanding, which perhaps the idea of a task force may in part address. But the other part is to be a player in moving forward in terms of how we can prevent these issues from occurring again.
Thank you, Senator Marjoram. Up front, right in the second row there.
Thank you. I appreciate where this discussion is going. My concern with early on a legislation or proclamation it would send the opposite message, which is something we can simply just proclaim and have it dealt with. I think this what we're talking about here, of the Senate taking action, taking some ownership in this, is really the kind of direction I'd like to see. And the proposal that Rob Keir put up earlier was what I was going to suggest be the content of this, because I think it is a collective problem. This is not about us telling the administration something's gone wrong. It's something that all of us should be involved in: students, faculty, staff, administration. And also, in terms of the role of this body, I think we should really think seriously about what is the role of this body to really engage in this. These are really complicated issues. It's not going to be resolved by a simple proclamation. It's going to be resolved by hard work and working through these problems. I think it's important for the administration to realize, though, too, that this is also the most representative body on campus, and it does represent all voices. And so I think it's really important that we be used effectively and we operate effectively to bring all those voices to air in the debate.
Thank you. Further discussion? Oh, I'm sorry, Senator Sullivan. I did not see your name tent. Sir.
Name tent. I like that.
Yeah, that's what it is. Tent.
I appreciate all the comments that have been made so far. And some of you may have noticed that I voted against the motion to suspend with the deepest respect for the movers. But I hope you don't think I take this matter lightly. I have two daughters who graduated from the University of Oregon during the first decade of this century. And so it is a matter that strikes very closely to home for me. However, I have learned that the Senate floor is the worst possible place to draft resolutions. I believe that we should table this for a week and have a well thought out, well drafted resolution. I volunteer Senator Dreiling to write it. That, since we all seem to be really in consensus with what he said, you got applause there, Mike. And it's much more likely to have the intended consequence. So it's only a week. A week is much longer than the 8 minutes we have been considering. It's probably been longer than that. And we all are really good thinkers. We can think about this a lot during the week. And I think we can come up with a good, well-worded resolution and pass it quickly next week. Next week is elections, so I want it to get passed quickly.
It would be 2 weeks is our next
In 2 weeks. Okay.
meeting.
I'm sorry, in 2 weeks. Not 1 week, 2 weeks. I can't do the math. So I would like to propose, I'd like to move to postpone this for 2 weeks. I move that.
So there's a motion on the floor with a second to postpone to a date certain. That would be May 28th, in order to have a senator draft a resolution that would be shared with the rest of the Senate before that meeting and presumably voted on at that meeting.
Yes, it's Senator Harbaugh's motion, but hopefully Senator Dreiling will work with him on that.
Well, your motion is to postpone it.
Yes.
So the motion on the floor is a motion to postpone till a date certain. It's been seconded. It's a simple majority vote. Is there any discussion on the motion? Senator Davidson.
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is I have a great deal of esteem for all the people who have been suggested would play the role of drafting this motion, but especially in light of the fact that this particular issue involves gender and sexual issues, among other things. There should be, more thought put into the representation and the participation that would take place.
Further discussion on the motion to postpone. Senator Delabow.
Thank you for that clarification. I'm making the assumption that through our Senate listserv, which frankly has been very productive this last 2 weeks with my 1,000 emails, and frankly has made me incredibly proud to be a senator because of the very thoughtful, considered comments people have made, and a lot of active comments from the larger community when we shared it with our constituency, which really I began to see the potential growth of involvement of the larger community in these dialogues. My assumption has been with this that you would do a draft and circulate it and people would have input in the crafting of it. And maybe that's too complicated, or maybe that's what I thought was going to happen. I didn't think you were going to write it up and we were going to vote in 2 weeks.
I don't think that's ever happened. Senator Dreiling.
Thank you. And I love how, that's been translated into me doing something here. I just hope right now we hold with some admiration everybody here in this room right now. Whatever the individual motivations individuals came with here, we are holding a really important space for this campus and a very important issue. And I think we can move forward together. And I would be willing to work with others on drafting a statement as well as adopting the proposal submitted by Senator Keir, President Rob Keir.
Further discussion, Senator Martinez, and then Senator Keir.
I think this point is a really good one in terms of the drafting of this and how it should be done. I'm completely supportive of the motion, and it's sort of an open question I'm just going to throw out into the floor. is the issue of who should be involved in the drafting. I tend to trust the vetting process that Cassia described, but I think the issue of the drafting is a relevant issue. And I'll just put the question on the floor. Are folks comfortable with that, with this selection of the drafters being put back to the Senate executive? Because it may be that they want that the president of the Senate may want consultation with administration, with Bob Keir, with other players in terms of trying to come up with initial language that the Senate might vet between now and then.
Senator Keir.
One way we could do this, if the body is interested, is to call for a meeting where everybody can participate in this. Those in the Senate who would like to do that, everybody having a voice and contributing to that drafting. It's an important issue. It's close to all of our hearts and minds. And Rich Marjoram said it. It's hard work. And we can all do this together. There is a mechanism by which we could do that if we agree today. And it would be fine if Michael Dreiling would like to lead the charge. That's fine. I mean, somebody can do that too and be an important part of it. Or we could do it from the Senate leadership. We can work together as a team to accomplish this.
Senator Harbaugh.
So I support this motion to have the Senate largely, via email, draft something like this. There are 3 points that I think are particularly important to include. The first is the call for transparency. I'm sure you're shocked to hear me say that. The second 2 come actually from Charles Martinez's statements, that our resolution should say something explicit about investigating the response to these incidents, and it should also include something explicit about how we propose to move forward. So I'm hoping that this process will lead to a resolution that includes those 3 components.
We had a student who wanted to participate, so I'd like to. Senator Schlegel.
Thanks.
Not a student, a senator.
Thanks. Well, going along with kind of talking about the content of it, I just want to kind of throw my caution out about having the survivor and this instance be the focus of this resolution, because it really sensationalizes this whole event. And I think, in my personal opinion, this should be more about the larger problem of sexual assault on our campus and how we can make institutional changes instead of putting all this focus on the survivor, because it's very triggering to other survivors on campus as well. So whoever's writing this, keep that in mind too. I will not volunteer, but I'll help review it.
And I guess in kind of an unorthodox manner, but I would just like to add my own thought as wearing my just constituency hat, and that would be, although I certainly endorse the concept of transparency, I think we have to get much more practical in this resolution. We have to recognize the limitations on transparency that President Gottfredson has been telling us about. We can't just keep saying everything has to be transparent when we know that it can't be. So I would ask that the resolution somehow reflect that complexity as well. And one more, Senator Delabow.
As a follow-on to that, I think it's essential that we make a very strong statement that the Senate is committed to collaborative governance, and that we are making this statement not only about this issue, but that we believe in working together in shared governance is the way through solving these problems. I think it's essential that at this point in time, the Senate steps up and say, we believe in that, and therefore we have faith, and we're building and rebuilding trust. Because otherwise, we're just going to go down the same old path again and again.
Senator Keir.
I'd like to propose to the body that we do set aside time so that all those who would like to have a real-time interaction, and also email, of course, can do that next week on the 21st. There's already a Senate executive meeting scheduled, so we would have the Senate exec plus anyone here who would like to come and participate. And that gives us different venues for discussing this, because some people are more comfortable in real time and sharing ideas and back and forth, and then others with email, and you can do both if you want. So I'd like to mix that in and see how the body votes on that. So if you approve that, we'll look for a space and make sure that it happens.
Okay, and so seeing no further discussion, we're going to vote on the motion to postpone the resolution to a date certain, which would be to May 28th, with the understanding the processes for drafting and vetting will ensue. All those in favor of the motion to postpone to a date certain, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion to postpone carries. Is there further? We are still in open discussion mode. Is there further discussion? Senator Davidson.
Yeah, I don't know if this is something that would make its way into the motion or not, or whether it could make its way into the motion. But as I've been thinking about the ingredients for the culture that would allow not just sexual assault, but violence and all kinds of other things that happen, I think about some of the kids who have grown up around Eugene while I've been here, and how impressed I've been with some of them that they don't seem to be homophobic, they don't seem to be misogynistic, and it's not that they were especially educated in any of those sorts of issues, it's that somehow they just grew up and they worked together and they played together and they came to trust and rely on each other. And we live and work at a very large university where things can become very, very impersonal and where people often feel like they're on their own and they deal with it with competition and drugs and alcohol and various other things that don't necessarily reinforce the values of mutuality and respect that they might like. And my guess is that part of our job isn't just to respond to the threats of violence and abuse and disrespect, but part of it is to try to figure out how to foster something positive in its place. That binds people across the divisions of gender and race and sex and everything else. And I don't know how to do that in a place this large. But I think that's probably part of what we owe folks and part of what we have to think about. And I don't know where to go with that, but anyway.
Thank you. Any further comments in open discussion? Senator Keir.
Could we agree to have the meeting next week? I think there are such important issues that are being discussed now, such as the one we just heard and every comment that's been made. And what's going to be happening, which people don't know, which I want to make very clear, we're in a transitional period. Margie will finish as of, I believe, May 23rd.
Yes.
And I will be taking office and officially leading the May 28th meeting. But I want to make sure that as a body, we are all honoring our responsibility to take ownership of this and go forward. And what I think really would work best is if we could make a strong statement saying that this next week we will come together for a 2-hour meeting, or as long as it takes. If it's a shorter meeting, but we'll leave 2 hours and we will deal with this so that everybody's voice can be heard. And also on email. I'm not quite sure how to deal with that in a parliamentary way, but can we have an advisory vote on that, or what do we need to do, Paul? Do we need to make a formal motion?
I don't know that we need to do anything. I'll leave that in your hands, but we can announce the date and time of the meeting, and I think we'll probably have to get maybe a different room. But it's it's essentially this day and time next week. So it's May 21st, 3 to 5. And currently we've got it in a relatively small. It's in the Lewis Lounge right now. So Lisa will find us a larger venue, and Rob, perhaps you'll want to email that information around. If you
Yes.
want a motion, I don't object to that. I'm just
No, we don't necessarily need a motion, but just a show of hands, how many would be able to and would be interested in coming next week at 3 to 5, May 21st, and bringing any people that you know who would be interested in discussing, and we will get a large space so that we'll have plenty of room, and everybody will have a chance to speak and contribute to this effort. Thanks so much. We'll be in touch very soon.
Thank you. Any further items for open agenda? And if not, seeing none, we will move back into our new business. And I will give those of you who are guests who came here for this discussion, please don't feel like you have to sit through, although you're welcome to, the rest of our meeting. We find it endlessly, not senators, you guys can't leave. We find it endlessly interesting, but not sure everybody does.
Put this one up. I think they might be here.
Professor Moore, are you here? Aaron Moore?
Maybe they're not here. Yes, Steve Mattel.
Steve Mattel, are you here? No. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, I think we don't have our sponsor. Oh, it came from the committee. Senator Keir, sorry to do some quick adjustments here, but in light of time, I'm wondering if we can move item 4.6, which is a motion to add an ex officio position to the Environmental Issues Committee. If we might move that up ahead of the slates. Is that acceptable? Okay, thank you. So we're going to turn to item 4.6, which is a motion. It comes to us from the committee. The sponsor could not be present, but it comes from the committee, so it comes as a seconded motion. And the title is Adding to Environmental Issues Committee an Ex Officio Position for Athletics. It's legislation, and it reads as follows. Section 1.1, whereas the Environmental Issues Committee was established to consider, analyze, and report in the form of advisories or recommendations on environmental issues that affect the quality of life and health of the university community, as well as on those issues about which the university should act as an educational resource. These reports shall include a financial impact statement for each recommendation, as well as an informative, impartial summary of the topic that outlines its effects, the issues discussed at all committee meetings, and any relevant background information. Recommend development of rules or policies directly related to environmental issues affecting quality of life and health to be adopted by the university administration and or university senate on behalf of the university community. Such recommendations shall include a financial impact statement for each recommendation, as well as an informative, impartial summary of the topic that outlines its effects, the issues discussed at committee meetings, and any relevant background information. Recommend, facilitate, and or implement educational programs, training sessions, forums, or workshops on environmental issues, which could be offered to members of the university community and or the general public. Recommend ways to inform the university community about environmental issues. And 1.2, whereas athletics and athletic events create significant opportunities to reduce environmental impact and promote sound practices and behavior. And 1.3, whereas, after discussing the matter and considering the membership structure of the Environmental Issues Committee, which includes ex officio representation from environmental health and safety, campus planning, design and construction, sustainability office, and student sustainability coalition, to provide institutional memory and broad perspectives to bear on issues before the committee, the Environmental Issues Committee concluded that ex officio representation from athletics would improve its performance. And Section 2.1, be it hereby moved that the Associate Athletic Director for Facilities and or his her designate shall serve as an ex officio non-voting member of the Environmental Issues Committee. The financial impact is cost neutral, and obviously the sponsor is the committee. And the athletics department has enthusiastically agreed to serve in this capacity. So as I say, this comes in as a seconded motion. Is there discussion on the motion? Senator Psaki, yes.
I have a question on 1.2. I'm sure that if they say so, it's true, but how? How is it's not really explicit in the motion. How do athletics and athletic events create significant opportunities to reduce environmental impact and promote sound practices and behavior?
They have a really big footprint on campus, so all of the events at which they're, there's paper and disposables and they have vehicles. I mean, it's a pretty big operation. It's an opportunity. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Great. Motion carries. Good. Now we'll flip back up to 4.1, which is one of 5 in our continuing work on the 10th year review process. So let's take a look at what we have here. We've got 2 committees, the Campus Planning Committee and the Tenure Reduction, Retirement, and Emeriti Committee. And so the motion itself, as we did with all the other ones, simply says, whereas, based on its 10th year review in 2014 of all university standing committees, the Committee on Committees has unanimously approved minor revisions for a slate of 7 university committees. We'll go through these in chunks. Section 2, 2.1, be it hereby moved that the Senate approves the minor revisions as specified in the following 17-point charts, which have been approved by the Committee on Committees and the Senate Executive Committee report for the Senate Executive Committee for each of the following committees. So then we'll look at these 2 committees before we engage in any voting. The first one is the Campus Planning Committee, and as we've been doing, I'll simply read the changes. Oh, that's okay. Oh, nice. I can read it from here. Thank you. So the Campus Planning Committee has indicated the following changes. First of all, it's estimated that this is a Tier 2 committee in terms of the workload. Under charges and responsibilities, the following language is added to the second sentence so that the second sentence will now read, the committee shall be consulted early in the process when a new development is anticipated and shall ensure that all development is in compliance with the current campus plan. The rest of that paragraph remains as it was. In the membership requirements, we now have added membership of the Campus Planning Committee is not fixed. Typically, it shall consist of 8 to 10 faculty, now adding and or officers of administration, minimum of 5 teaching faculty, 5 students, and 1 classified member selected from the university at large. I'll just keep reading this one since there are more proposed changes. It will also include 1 faculty member who is appointed for a 3-year term by the Senate President and is in the University Senate at the time of appointment. In addition, the committee will include the following ex officio members: a representative of the College of Arts and Sciences, the Dean of Architecture and Allied Arts, a representative of the Accessible Education Center, the head of campus operations, the head of campus planning, design, and construction, and each vice president or designee. The leadership structure of the committee is as follows. There is a chair elected from the committee membership. There is no convener. The chair has worked with the staff person who's provided from the Office of Campus Planning and Real Estate in order to convene meetings. The chair would be elected at the first meeting in the fall. Non-student members would have 3-year terms, and hopefully those will be staggered. Students would typically serve 1 year, although 2 if possible. Obviously, the ex officios will serve indefinitely in their office. Term limits for the chair would be elected annually and cannot serve more than 3 consecutive years. And as you see, the frequency of the meetings is estimated about 3 or 4 per term, sometimes in the summer. The chair would have expected Tier 1 workload of 40 to 45 hours a year, and as I said, the committee 25 to 35 hours per year. And I believe the reporting deadline, is this new, Lisa? Is this new language? This is existing language. Okay. Is there anything else on the remainder? It's a standing committee in our administrative grouping. Any comments or discussion on this? Senator Keir?
Just a very brief comment to say that we are going to be adding, as of would be September 15th, an 18th point to all the charts that will deal with the issue of confidentiality, if there is such. As you know, we have pending legislation that will come before us in October related to the FAC, the IAC, and various other committees. So there actually will be a point on the chart that will apply to that, so everybody will know where things stand. Obviously added after the legislation.
Thank you. Good. Let's move on to the Tenure Reduction Committee proposed changes. Great. All righty. So this is the Tenure Reduction, Retirement, and Emeriti Committee. A new background section added. There are currently a number of issues arising from the decentralization of, I would just make a housekeeping change and capitalize that acronym, a new policy on the status and rights of emeriti and the consequences of the collective bargaining agreement. It may take several years to work through the implications. The committee itself is estimated at a Tier 3 workload. Oh, that's okay. And then the membership requirements will remain the same. Leadership structure is that it has a chair elected from committee membership. The Senior Vice Provost for Academic Affairs convenes this committee. Chair will be selected at the first meeting. Members of the committee, all of whom are non-students, will serve 2-year terms. There are no term limits. It meets about 2 to 3 times per year, depending on what issues are brought before it. And the reporting deadlines now have been made consistent with all of our deadlines, and that is that the committee shall make a report to the Senate, and at a minimum, this report shall be in the form of an annual written report submitted by the committee chair to the Senate President and the Senate Executive Coordinator no later than the final University Senate meeting in May. Any comments on the proposed, these are very minor, as you can tell, changes to this committee? Okay, good. So now moving back to the main motion. This is a motion to approve these 2 revised committee descriptions. Is there any further discussion on the motion itself? All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Let's see if we can do one more. Let's do this one. This is P-TRAC. I will not read this motion since you just heard me read it, and we'll go right to the description of the P-TRAC. P-TRAC changes are coming up. Brief description now will state, and by the way, this is a Tier 2 committee in terms of its workload. P-TRAC shall consider only formal grievances concerning denial of promotion or denial of tenure, or denial of both, or failure to renew an appointment in violation of the OAR, which is now specified, and the words grievance rights are struck. This is going to have to be changed anyway when the OARs become rules of the Board of Trustees. Charge and responsibilities have been amended to remove the sentence saying the purpose of this committee and to add the following phrase to the first sentence. So in other words, P-TRAC is governed by ... and follows rules of procedure as set out in the OARs are listed and the collective bargaining agreement. And again, this will eventually have to be revised anyway to substitute for those OARs. Membership has been changed quite a bit. So here's the membership requirement, the newly proposed membership requirement. The P-TRAC shall consist of 3 members who shall hold tenured appointments as follows: 1 in the College of Arts and Sciences, 1 in the professional schools and colleges, and 1 from any academic unit, except that the at-large member may not be from the same department, school, or college as either of the other 2 members. The university president, vice presidents, provost, vice provosts, associate and assistant provosts, deans, associate deans, and department heads are ineligible to serve. No person shall serve simultaneously on the P-TRAC and the Faculty Personnel Committee. Any P-TRAC member who served on the Faculty Personnel Committee or a school or college personnel committee when the aggrieved action or decision or an informal review thereof occurred, or who participated in a departmental vote on such a matter, is disqualified from participating in P-TRAC's decision on the appeal and must be excused from it, but shall otherwise continue to serve on the committee. Here's the election processes. Elections for the... is that a typo that says FPC? I believe that should say elections for P-TRAC shall be held in the spring quarter. Only members of the voting faculty who are officers of instruction with tenure or in tenure-track positions shall be eligible to vote for elections to the P-track. The Committee on Committees shall ensure a slate of at least 2 qualified candidates for each open position each year. Candidates may also be nominated by petition. A petition with 10 valid signatures of voting faculty shall place those candidates nominated by the petition on the ballot. Petitions shall be distributed by the Secretary of the Faculty, that should say Senate Executive Coordinator, and shall specify whether they are for candidates to represent the College of Arts and Sciences, the professional schools and colleges, or the at-large position. Separate ballots shall be prescribed for the candidates from the Colleges of Arts and Sciences and the professional schools and colleges. The ballots shall list the candidates nominated by the Committee on Committees and those nominated by petition. Ballots shall be circulated to all voting faculty members. Peremptory challenges. A grievant may make a peremptory challenge of one member of the committee. That member shall be replaced by one selected to serve pro tem by the grievant from a list proposed by the Faculty Advisory Council of 3 tenured candidates. Disqualifications. If a member is temporarily disqualified, the person who received the next highest vote in the most recent election for the position shall be asked to serve in place of the disqualified member. And then there's a bunch of stuff that's struck. Finally, the chair is identified as elected from the committee membership. The P-track is convened by the provost or designee. It's staffed within the provost's office, selects its chair at its first meeting, whenever that takes place. Service of the faculty on this committee is 3 years, hopefully staggered. No term limits for the... there is a one-term term limit for committee members, and obviously it meets only as needed. The tier designation is very approximate. It really depends on how many cases are up in any particular year. Here's our estimate, Tier 2, 20 to 30 hours. It shall make a report to the Senate annually. At a minimum, this report shall be in the form of an annual written report submitted by the committee chair to the Senate President and the Senate Executive Coordinator by June 1st. Because its cases are confidential, P-TRAC's reports typically indicate only the number of appeals that it heard that year. It's an external board. Well, it's required. It's a mandated board. It's in our grievances and appeals unit. Any discussion? Yes. Thank you. Valbuena, thank you.
Hi, it's more of a question. So I am here representing the Honors College, which people might know is a recent college. It has not had too many years of history. And I don't see it appearing in a lot of documents, and I believe for that reason. So the composition of this committee, and I imagine other committees, says the College of Arts and Science, the professional schools, colleges, and the at-large. So I was just wondering the position of the Honors College in any committee composition, if it would necessarily be in the at-large, or I don't know. So it's a basic question about where we stand.
I'm stepping over so I can actually look at our senior vice provost. Doug, do you have a sense of how that's been handled? If, for example, somebody in the Honors College from history, are they treated as a member of the Arts and Sciences College? No. So they would be in the at-large.
Because I know... Sorry, I will just continue quickly.
Yep.
I know that the Honors College has obtained a seat in a few committees after some work towards that, but apparently is not pervasive. So this is a concern, and this is something I'm going to bring and possibly bring to them to see how it can be.
Yeah, it might be good to discuss not only with your faculty, but also with people who've been on the Committee on Committees or with the Provost's office, because it's I do know it's very difficult to staff this, to find enough people to sit on the committee. And so I would simply want you to have a discussion about whether it's possible to actually get somebody from the Honors College every year to serve. I don't know if that's a helpful idea or not, but Senator Murskin.
Thank you.
Thank you. One kind of question, observation. Under number 4, the section is titled Charge and Responsibilities. But there don't seem to be any responsibilities listed
or charge, per se, under that. So I'm not sure if that material has been moved around and needs to be presented a bit differently in there. But that doesn't seem to be at all what that is about.
It's a governance.
Yeah, it's a governance.
Well, there is
It's struck out.
Okay, right.
I volunteer for this committee.
Yeah, really?
Oh, let's scroll up just a minute. Let me see where the...
So it's sort of captured under brief description, but
You're right.
There are specific charges and responsibilities.
You're absolutely right. I think we need to take this back. Yeah, I apologize for my bad proofing. Those of us on the Committee on Committees probably fell asleep when this one was in front of us.
Another,
Yeah, go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Another one is a concern within there that it appears that the prior requirement to have served on the University Faculty Personnel Committee has been removed.
Senator Sayer, are you familiar with that? Wait, let's get a microphone. You've seen this before?
Yeah, having served as chair of the Faculty Personnel Committee for a year or two, I noticed this clause and saw the wisdom in it, and although I don't know where it originated. So it may be worth retaining, or perhaps the Committee on Committees has a reason for striking it.
Is there any member of that group that... okay. Senator Lynn is not present today. Okay. I think we're going to take this one back, but let's take a few more comments because that'll be helpful as we redo it. Senator Keir and then Senator Psaki.
Very quick procedural comment. I believe that under the charge and responsibilities, if you could scroll to that, please. As I remember in the meeting, the last meeting we had where it would have been in the context of the Committee on Committees, people felt that just listing those OARs would be enough because of what will be happening to those OARs as of July 1st. If everybody will remember, we discussed this, but of course we're tracking so many things. Just to repeat that we're in a process of realignment where the OARs will be, in essence, rewritten for our new board to take into consideration how things will be governed in our new structure. So I think people just wanted to list these current OARs rather than spell it out. I'm not saying that that's right, and you may wish to have it all spelled out. That's fine too, but just recounting that.
Thank you. One more comment, and then I'm going to ask your permission to move into the reporting part of our agenda so we can take some of our visitors who've come to give reports. Senator Psaki.
So I'll talk really fast. I suspect it's a good idea to remove the requirement of prior service on the FPC because it has traditionally been so hard to staff this committee. I am very regretful that the reports from this committee only say the number of cases treated and not the outcomes, not the way that the PTRAC voted, and not whether that vote was upheld or not. So I think facts like that are important and could be circulated without loss of confidentiality or breach of confidentiality. And I think that at the moment that you open up your page to check on PTRAC, you are in a state of heightened emotional intensity that makes it very frustrating to find a series of numbers and to be remanded to some other legalese. So let's get the charge and everything in there.
Yeah, I apologize for this. We will take this back, make it nice and clear. Okay, so let's go back to our main motion. This was the only one. So I'm going to ask that we simply postpone this until we come back with this particular item. All those in favor? Opposed? All right. I now ask your permission to kind of shortcut and not look at the rest of our new business so that we can have some of the reports. We've had some people come to our meeting today specifically to give reports. Is there any objection to that? Okay, good. And so I'm going to first ask to report to us. Do we have Andrew Bonamici? Are you here? Thank you, sir. Andrew Bonamici, who is the Associate University Librarian for Media and Instructional Services. Thank you.
Do you want me to do this from here with the mic?
That's fine. Yeah,
Okay.
we'll get you a mic so that people can hear you.
A little quicker, too, because I know we're short on time. So you'll remember in January, Deborah Carver came to give an update on the learning management system review process. This is the next stage of that update process. This is available on the Senate website, so I encourage you to go through it. Feel free to forward any questions to me or to Helen Shu, who's Director of Academic Technology. So after reviewing 5 platforms during winter term, there was some extensive testing that went on then. There was an analysis of that data, and the platforms moved forward for further consideration were Canvas from Instructure and Sakai hosted by the Longsight Corporation. Those are now under review with live courses. We have a fantastic group of people involved in the testing. You can see the courses and your colleagues who are participating in that. So we have 24 courses, 24 faculty, 38 GTFs, and over 2,000 students who are using these 2 platforms in live courses during this term. At the end of the term, after grades are submitted, we'll be crunching a lot of data from focus groups, from surveys that are being conducted with both the students and the instructors in these courses. At the end of June, we'll be reconvening the task force to take a look at that data and make a determination about what moves ahead for some further exploration. So in addition to the teaching and learning aspects of a learning management system like this, there are technology integration and feasibility factors that will need to be explored in depth with information services and other partners around campus. We don't really know how long that might take. Some of it has to do with workload in other units. Some of it may have to do with the relative complexity of those back-end assessments for any platforms that are moving forward. So what we're anticipating is that sometime toward the end of the summer, if all goes well, we could start moving toward procurement, and then we would begin licensing and implementation during fall. The important message here is that instead of wrapping up a contract at the end of spring term and implementing over the summer, we'll now be implementing during fall term. So the timeline for migration is pushed back by a term. We still have the Blackboard license through September 2015. So there's still a very generous window for migration. We're also very pleased to have gotten some support for the migration process through the strategic funding process with some one-time money and some recurring money, potentially, depending on the cost of a new license. So that's the main takeaway is that toward the end of the summer, we're hoping to have a further announcement after one more stage of review by the LMS task force. So we're really grateful for all the support the community has provided in this process. It's been a really thoughtful and hard-working group.
And I think we have a question here from Senator Psaki.
So when you say migrate, do you mean also existing courses in Blackboard can migrate fairly seamlessly into the new technology, or do we start from scratch?
That's one aspect of the testing process that people are going through right now, is how well do these courses migrate from Blackboard into the test platforms under consideration. So.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that report.
All right.
And the report is posted on the Senate website as well. Thank you. So we also have a report from our new UO Ombuds officer, Bruce McAllister. Bruce, welcome.
Thank you.
We'll get you a mic here.
All righty. Thank you.
And you can stand either here, or if you like a podium, you can go up there too.
No, that's fine. I was going to give a long and elegant address, but now that we're time constrained,
it's always time constrained in the Senate.
There are some copies of some basic materials available if you want them after the presentation. Just come up, and I've got a kind of an interim brochure available. I've got frequently asked questions available, and contact information available too. But let me introduce myself. I'm Bruce McAllister. I am the new University Ombudsperson. I've been here on board since March 17th, so just about 2 months. Charged with implementing your new ombuds program for you. I come from a background of ombudsing. I was the ombudsman for the University of California at its Los Alamos campus, off in New Mexico, actually, for 10 years. I've been on the board of directors for the Ombudsman Association, served as a board member there, was the liaison to the American Bar Association when the Ombuds Association was negotiating standards of practice with the Bar Association. So I've kicked around the ombudsman field for about 18 years now. I'm also an attorney by background. Don't hold that against me. I've tried to amend my ways and be a good ombudsman in the process. And I wanted to give you a little status report on where we stand with the Ombuds program. I've had 2 months in place to implement. And the good news is we basically now have, in those 2 months, an operational Ombuds program that's available for visitors to use. We're located in temporary space in Ansted Hall on the first floor of Ansted Hall, which is one of the halls. It's the right-hand older building to the Lillis Complex as you're facing the Lillis Complex off of 13th. And we have our systems in place. We have a tracking system, an interim tracking system in place. Eventually that tracking system will auto-populate with some basic information out of the Banner databases for students and employees. And we have our basic outreach materials. We're working closely with University Advancement to develop our full-fledged outreach materials, and we have a deadline for the end of this month to do what I'm referring to at this point as a soft launch. I'm not turning visitors away. I've already worked with a number of visitors, already in fact seen some trends. But until we have our systems in place and our permanent space in place, or at least our operational space in place, I wasn't trying to encourage visitors when we just weren't ready to really assure adequate confidentiality. A little bit about the Ombuds program. There's 4 important tenets that we work to. The first is informality. We work with visitors, and we don't call them clients, we don't call them patients, they are visitors, people who work with us. The idea is to work informally, and if appropriate, to refer them, suggest options and alternatives into formal processes, into other services, or to work with them directly. It's a non-escalating process. We don't take ownership of any visitor's problem. We're there to empower the visitor to take ownership of their problem and help them come up with approaches and tools to resolve that. It's a plenary program, meaning that it's available to students, faculty, staff, anybody who is impacted by the university and its decision making. So potentially even off-campus visitors, if it's an issue under the university's jurisdiction, can approach the Ombuds program and weigh in on concerns. It's confidential. We do not, and this can be controversial as well as confidential, the Ombuds program is not an office of report. It is not, because of the confidentiality, an appropriate resource to place the university on notice or for Clery reporting, Clery Act reporting. It is a confidential resource that offers this type of security so that people feel comfortable coming forward informally without fear of losing control of their options. It is neutral. While I report directly to the president, I'm not officially considered part of the administration. I'm not considered management, although I manage the one other person in the Ombuds staff. But it's not a management position. It's not an employee advocacy position. It is a neutral resource that is available for managers and non-managers alike to seek advice in the safety of that zone of confidentiality. So what tenets have I forgotten here? Neutral, confidential, independent. Again, I'm not aligned with any particular organization because I report directly to the president. So if there are issues that involve two different departments, two different deans, an academic, non-academic, I'm not to be viewed as aligned with any of the positions. So with that, with my role kind of explained to you, let me tell you where we stand with implementation. We have 5 things going on in parallel. One is developing the outreach materials. One has been office logistics. A third and very important initiative is program integration. And by that, what we're doing is we're meeting with all the key services and all the key offices, university health, campus police, HR, all the different functions around student complaint resolution services, a lot of the student services, to make sure that we have a map of the lay of the land. And in that process, we also identify potential gaps, overlaps in service delivery. And we come back to the constituents of those offices and we lay this out and we say, here's our understanding of what you do. Here's our understanding of the referral matrix between our office and these other offices, and among these offices, if you will. And we have the opportunity at that point to realign functions and services, to clarify how we explain functions and services. And in that process, I'm able to introduce myself to all these other organizations, and they're able to become familiar with the Ombuds program and resolve any issues about how the Ombuds program will embed itself into those organizations and into the matrix of campus services for the workforce and for students. And finally, as far as implementation goes, we will be doing a very aggressive, what I'm calling a hard launch, concurrent with fall term. By then, we hope to have permanent space, which needs to adequately provide for confidentiality, insulating incoming visitors from outgoing visitors. If it's right on campus, that's great. But then if it is, we have to be in a location that provides an ostensible cover story for people so that they can be in that location for any number of reasons. Cappuccino card, there you go, things like that. So I think at this point, if there's, I don't know what kind of time frames we have, if there's any quick questions or anything, I'd be happy to answer questions.
We're very glad you're here. Welcome, Bruce. Thank you. Wonderful. Okay, great. Are there any announcements or communications from the floor? Professor Stahl, and then Senator Keir.
Thank you. I speak on behalf of Nathan Tublis, who has mailed to the Senate President a notice of motion entitled, "You owe Senate resolution of no confidence in President Michael Gottfredson." Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Professor Bonine and then Senator Keir. I know that you were next, Rob. But
I will also be offering a notice of motion regarding the notice student conduct code, or perhaps 18 motions.
Thank you. And Senator Keir.
Actually, mine would fall under 8, the presentation. Can we go to 8?
Let's go to 8.
It needs to be our last bit of business.
Oh, okay. One more
Please.
announcement.
So on the agenda above, there's the last new business for today was going to be a motion on report on UO's academic support for student athletes. And I'd just like to make clear that I'm going to change that motion so that it includes some discussion of the recent sexual assault, violence, and efforts to deal with that as well.
Okie doke. And we obviously have some continuing business that we didn't get to. Good. We move into item number 8. Oh, and we have to do something.
Okay. May I come up to the
Please
the
do.
front? We have a presentation to make from the Senate to you, Margie.
Oh, my gosh.
And I'd like to read a commendation of service.
Oh, wow. It's signed. That's
The University of Oregon Senate hereby commends Margaret L. Margie Paris for her exceptional service to the university as Senate President during the 2013 to 2014 academic year. You can applaud.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
We are deeply grateful for your vision, your insight, and your wise leadership, especially during these transformative times for our university. You have inspired us to give the very best of ourselves through service during a year when we collectively addressed a host of demanding issues.